It's a huge global business, but it's very small. And so in terms of, you're only 1-2 people away from really the people that you meet. You met 7 people and say, who did you remember? You're going to remember the person that's either come to you with some personal stuff or something that's very special. You cannot do that in a first meeting if you've not done the right homework. I've seen the disruption thing of us trying to be smarter than the client. That's just my own experience. And you see the client sort of, oh, you're going to tell me how you're going to save $100 million from my bloody business, and you've only just walked in there. I hate that as a relationship person. And as long as we listen, understand, course correct, adapt, adopt, improve was my father's phrase that I always took with me from my family business. I think that's important as well.
Hi, my name's John, and you've joined the Experience Cafe. And today I've got Jason Duff here to talk about client relationships. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John.
It's great to have you. And obviously you've had a quite an illustrious career in client relationships and sales in IBM. Maybe you'd just like to give a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah. So actually, first time I've been in London for 7 years, Jason Duff. Currently based in Houston, but spent some time in Singapore before that. And then back in the UK, where you and I knew each other. I'm coming up to 25 years in IBM. I have no idea how that worked out, but that's 1st of November, I think we come up to that. But most of my time I've been on sales and relationships is what I probably specialize on specifically, of going into a business, specifically, as an IBM team, really making ourselves relevant and really focusing on the relationship and the skills and really sort of getting deep with the client.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to exploring this topic a bit more with you, because obviously this is something that you're kind of well known for. But before we get there,
yes.
Tell me 2 truths and a lie about yourself.
Can I do 3 lies? 2 truths and a lie. I speak Russian. I played for Scotland rugby team, and I currently live in Houston, Texas.
Okay, unfortunately, it's going to be Scottish rugby.
Did I make that too easy? I was trying to make that. I used to be an athlete. No, I didn't. You're absolutely right.
Yes, and how did you end up speaking Russian?
Really interesting point. Well, so I was self-employed, and someone asked me one day, did I want to go to Kiev? And I thought, where? And I could immediately think of chicken Kiev. This was the early 90s, and generally, probably 93, the Iron Curtain had just come down. We were looking, there was a lot of investment going into Ukraine at that time, Belarus, Kazakhstan. So I went out and was self-employed. In the 90s, it literally was new, fresh market. Everything was in Cyrillic and Russian, so it was either sink or swim. Go back to my relationship skills. Guess what? I didn't want to sit there with a translator and be 30 seconds, a minute back from conversations. So I dived in as much, I dove in and tried to try and put words together. It took me about 8 months, but it's still there. Jeśli ja хочу говорю по-русски, это без проблем. That's probably to the people listening to this will go, what? But literally it's in the top of my head. I can still translate, and actually it became the right thing. And then I went to Russia, 2003, when BP bought 50% of Human Oil, and I spent another 2 years there. So I think knowing the language, even more so knowing the culture, using that, my client relationship skills, that's what I did. And so that's where my Russian. And I didn't play rugby for Scotland. I would have loved to, but here you go.
Although you do come from St Andrews, which is, and do you play golf?
So I don't know if you know this. Born in St Andrews 54 years ago. I know I look much younger, probably younger than you, but 54. And I never picked up a golf club until 4.5 years ago in Singapore, where my wife was looking for some golf lessons. I went to see the coach or the professional there, and he said, you're a big guy, you can hit the ball. And I said, no, I'm the only person probably from St Andrews that doesn't play golf. So I picked up a golf club, loved it, and I'm trying to catch up rigorously now. I play a lot in Houston, once, twice a week, if I can. But a great sport, but why I did not pick it up till I was 50, it's just crazy. But there you go.
Well, it sounds like you're making up for lost time.
I'm trying.
Jason, so you spent most of your career in the oil and gas industry. But I guess, what would you say, what's been the secret to your success in building client relationships in your career? You kind of gave us a bit of a hint there in terms
Yeah.
of how you started off. How would you describe?
So it's really
Because in our experience, I mean, building client relationships doesn't always come natural to some people. Are natural.
Yeah.
I would argue someone like yourself. Other people, it's something that needs to be learned or developed as a skill. And I guess what we're keen to get out of you today is what can we take away from your natural skills, and how can people learn from that?
No, it's a good point, John, because if you look at the oil and gas industry at first, it's a huge global business, but it's very small. And so in terms of, you're only 1-2 people away from really the people that you meet. And if you've been in an industry so long, I think you understand then you live by what you sell and deliver. And clearly that goes with your name. And actually, again, having been in the industry for 25, 30 years now, in and out of the industry, you get known for things, and you get known as trust and relevance. And the guys generally in the industry usually don't move around a lot. Yes, move around assets, but stay in the companies they start in. So it's not unfamiliar to meet people that are 25, 30, 35 years in a company. If we want to do business as IBM, if you take it back to, I think, where you're going, and I'll go to my bit, but if we want to do business as IBM in industries like this, we have to think, feel, smell, look like the people in the industry. And I've always tackled it like that. So when I've been in oil and gas, I've really, really tried to think like, okay, I understand what IBM's trying to do, but how do I then translate that? So my job, I think, in sales relationships is to really not just take in direct plays and presentations for IBM, but really think of, okay, how do I translate it? Listen to the client and really get close to what they're looking for, then come back as a translator, maybe a little bit like my Russian, if I'm being honest. Maybe that's why I'm good at languages and good at sales, or relationships, actually. But I think then you come in and and this is where we're successful, because if we have to make sure that we hit, what does the client really want? What are they really thinking about? Can you draw on a page? Have you summarized it? Can you translate it? And I think too many times, I think as IBM, we try and go back in potentially with some standard slides and it doesn't hit the mark. Guess why? Because we've not been relevant or very specific enough. And I think you really need to have those relationships and skills. I think it's a listening game. I think you know this already. I worked for my father before and was self-employed for a number of years before I joined IBM. My father, I think I used the same family principles, a family setup, even today in IBM. I work in Houston now in oil and gas, and I still treat it like a family business in the principles. And I think it's 2 ears, one mouth, and let's do the right thing. And then you do the right thing and the work's good, you put more business on the table, more food on the table. And if you don't, then there's a problem. But you have to solve it if it's your family business. So that's what I've been trying to do. So I think it's getting in, really going swimming, with the fish, or the oil and gas fish, if you like, and really becoming, someone that's in the industry. You can't sit and half go in and out, because then you'll be treated like a blue suit that really doesn't understand, and you'll coach around or dance around, but you'll never be accepted by some of these guys. And I think I notice as well during my time, some people are afraid to go into CIOs or IT managers or even above that. And I think these are just people. I think they respect your experience, what you've seen, what you're thinking. They're people. And I think we forget that. I think we want to lead with slides sometimes and presentations. I think it's all about relationships. I'd rather go for a coffee and learn about someone and understand. We're people, John. That's what you and I have always said this, I think, in our Shell days when we knew each other. I think it's people and working out, how do we get the best? You show up as yourself. IBM just helps the brand that knows when you and I like each other, we can do something. I've got IBM behind me that'll bring the power of 340,000 people and the right skills, the right delivery to you. I think that's the bit. A long answer, but I think that's what we do. I think I covered IBM and myself there, I hope.
And do you think that translates beyond your industry, across industries?
I think so.
Do you think it's universal?
Yeah, I do. So go to 3 years ago, pre-COVID, is that right? Yeah. I was in Singapore, I was in ASEAN, sales and relationship lead for ASEAN. That's 6 countries. So think geographically as far north as Philippines, south as far south as Indonesia. Those cultures, they are very, very different in each country. So you need to then really think about, I used to actually have a story that every morning I'd get up, do a lap in my bedroom before I got dressed and think to myself, where am I? Which Jason turns up today in terms of what skill do I need to bring out? How do I get my right message through? How do I get my team working for what I want to do? And I think that's a lot to do with sales as well. I think sales and relationships. You can't just storm in and be the big crazy 6'5" bald Scotsman and expect it to work. I think it's that plus a cultural sensitivity of how do you get your point over and where you're going to go. And I kind of quite like that. It's a little bit like my Rubik's Cube. That's probably what's kept me going in this industry, I think, of who I am, actually. The challenge.
Yeah. And I guess in terms of building new relationships with clients in a wide space where you're going to create an impression, you've got to build trust. And I guess it's about delivering on what you say and being consistent, to your point, listening and being able to translate in terms of what the issue is to be relevant. What about the alternative where you've walked into a situation where that trust is broken, and how do you rebuild it?
That's actually something I thrive on, actually. I love going in and coming in from behind because I think that's the best way of, you know you've been kicked, it hurts. There is only one way up. You can maybe look at it that way, but also you have to really dig in. And you really need to dig in I've got a couple of, there was one account where we were doing very successful with for a number of years. Just as an example, and give you, I had a sense, a smell that something was going wrong in the account. There was a sense of me of just listen to my guys. There was a new CIO, and I decided to make a call into the CIO and really understand what was going on and what was happening. And they were halfway through assessing our work and giving it to someone else. And our team didn't even have a sense of what was going on. And I think I used probably my senses of what the team were thinking. I think if you looked back, if we'd asked the right questions and been closer to the client, yes, there was a new CIO, but we didn't cover ourselves enough. Now, luckily, I dug in there and asked for a favor because I was new into the account in the region, and we saved it. But I think we saved it because we were real. I put my hands up where we really were bad. We had a plan of action to correct, and we literally drumbeat the activities. And I gave them my personal commitment. And I think that's another big thing, John, that we do need to give personal commit as well. Just by saying that IBM will do something, okay, that means something. But if you've got your own personal commit on it, I think that's 2 things. One, you're telling the person, go back to it. There's a real personal handshake that I'm going to see this through. We also need to turn around and hold IBM accountable as well and make sure the business understands what you need to do to be successful. And again, I think that's a difficult thing to do sometimes. I think us personally standing up and putting your hand out and saying, I'm going to fix this, without knowing can IBM, I think it's up to us, again, as sales and relationship people. No one else is going to stand up and do that. If you really want to be a sales and relationship person with that, at that point, it's you that has to set that agenda with the person and with IBM and get the right help. I think that's...
I've navigated through it, and therefore...
I think on white space, I'm very focused when it comes to white space. I call it almost a sort of... I'll put a chip down on a roulette table on a new relationship, but it has to be something that I've thought about, that I have a good feeling, or someone's got an input. So someone I met in Switzerland this week, I know exactly, I won't tell you where it is, but I know exactly who I wanted to meet. I know I've got my plan, what I want to do. I'm qualifying it in my head. I've got 2 people I wanted to meet, and I'll go after it. But I get very focused white space. That sounds a little bit, again, positive, negative, but I think it has to be that. But again, I'll do a lot of homework. I will not just walk in and try and guess who you are. I'll do anything and more to try and find out who you are, what you are, from different sources, online, people that you know, and at least get the stuff. I think people do like to be stroked, and that sounds a weird, but I think people really need, if you're going to go in and shake someone's hand, you need to leave something. To be just come in as IBM and go out, I don't think that works personally. If you if you don't leave a mark in the next week, you met 7 people and say, who did you remember? You're going to remember the person that's either come to you with some personal stuff or something that's very special. You cannot do that in a first meeting if you've not done the right homework. So again, white space for me, be focused. You can learn a lot about people, so much. Just phone calls, digging in. And I think it's too lazy if you think, oh, I'll just go and see John. I think I know the industry. I don't see that working. You're taking too much. You're probably putting a chip on, the number 1 versus a red or black. You'd be much better going in with at least some information.
So, so if you're approaching new relationships, I guess you're saying focus, do your homework, do your research, clarify what the objectives are, what the person's context is, to be relevant to them, and drive success. Because often we find people are either naturally what we would consider sort of hunters versus farmers, in terms of people who are natural at breaking new ground and making, breaking into new spaces, meeting new people, versus people who are more comfortable working with people they're associated with.
I'm laughing because I remember when I was going through for my partner panel, I showed, I think you probably remember this as well, I showed a cart full of apples with 1 orange in the middle. And I was the orange. And I was the orange. Surprise, surprise, right? But I was trying to get a point. There's 2, you're right, there's sales. There's a whole bunch of deals in a current account, and we can run through the internals and sign extensions on new work. And a lot of people are good at that. And in IBM, I see a lot more people in that area than the other area on sales, which we do need, John, as well. And you and I have spoken about this. Is the room next door with 100 new people that you don't know. And that's daunting for a lot of us. Unfortunately, I'm the strange orange one. I do like going through that door. I don't know what it is. Probably goes back to my father's my father's family stuff again of you need to do it. If you don't do it, you won't put food on the table. But that's the door that I would choose, and not a lot of us choose that. And there is a skill. But actually, if you think about it, we are so diverse. We've got some great people. I think people are just nervous. Would rather stay at the sales side of things of, let's just go with what we know. I think if we just took 1 step up the ladder and just went into that a lot more, you would find the experience that each of us have of what we've seen, how we're doing it. My industry, oil and gas are laggards. They want to hear from other industries.
So on that point, quick change of topic, a bit more insight into you in terms of being the orange versus the apple. So quick 10 questions.
We didn't prep this. Hold on, I'm going to...
You don't need your glasses for this. It's okay. The morning or evening?
Morning, although my wife and family are evening people, so that makes it really, really difficult at night. So yes, I'm morning, they're evening. And actually in Houston, everyone's morning, so yes.
Okay. Diet or exercise?
Do I need to answer that? I'd love to say exercise, however.
All right. Yeah.
It's just not way too personal.
Email or chat?
Chat. Has to be. Too many... email. You can read so much into email. I like keeping it nice and short. Get verbally, get going. You know what you're talking about.
Yes or perhaps?
Yes.
That was pretty clear. The Consumer Electronics Show or Wimbledon?
Wimbledon. Relationship building. Nice and easy.
Disruption or transformation?
Two of the same things in my mind. It's funny, we presented with this with Arvind Krishna this week in Lucerne, and a bunch of oil and gas CEOs. Transformation. Difficult, but I'd see both of them very, very similar in my view.
Oh, you can explore that a bit later. Cloud or GDPR?
GDPR.
Video or phone call?
Video. You need to see what you're working with, and yeah.
Consult or direct?
Direct.
Speed or accuracy?
Speed.
Fantastic, cool. So,
how did I do that? 5 out of 10. Please leave now. Was this my exit interview?
There's no right or wrong answers, Jason. But in my view, disruption is something where there's an existential threat, as opposed to transformation, where we can try and.
That's where I was worried about disruption. I like the word, but I think it can come over, John, as arrogant if we don't watch. I've seen the disruption thing of us trying to be smarter than the client. That's just my own experience. And you see the client sort of, oh, you're going to tell me how you're going to save $100 million from my bloody business, and you've only just walked in there. I hate that as a relationship person. So I think that's why the disruption, I get it, but there's a way to disrupt in an easier way. That's just my perception of the word disrupt, if that makes sense.
In terms of something that is a bit
that doesn't go with the flow. And again, if you really know your business and you do it smartly, you can do it. But I've seen us trying to play this arrogant side of us, and it doesn't come off well, is my own experience.
Maybe that's a good segue to failures and what we can learn from them. So in your career, if you think back, what was one of your biggest failures and something that you really learned from that's helped to shape you and the way you approach things?
I've got one business one and one personal one. Let me talk about the personal one, actually. I had thought about this. So probably, and it is relationship and personal. I got offered to go to Singapore very, very quickly. The process was very, very quick. And my wife would tell you, she'll be watching this and laughing now, that I didn't consult her on my...
That's because you like to direct.
Yeah, I do like to direct. There you go. So I think we spoke about it, but I probably should have done more personal conversation. It was the right thing to do as a family. It was the right thing to do personally. And it was the right thing to do from a business perspective. I think the relationship side and the personal, I'm just being, I wish I'd given my personal case in that situation a lot more time and thought it through more. Just a very personal, I'm quite open and honest about that one. And I think that's when you can take your relationships and personal stuff and is really from a personal and a business. A lot of people have questioned me that said, what's the difference between, do you keep business and personal way away from each other? And it's very close for me. I can fall in and out of, actually there's very little gaps at sometimes. And I'm comfortable with that, and it's me. I think on a business side.
Oh, sorry. So to take away from that, your lesson was there's, in terms of taking relationships for granted, and not thinking through the impact of other parties.
This is, has Margaret written to you now? And this is, should I lie down on the couch and take some sort of advice from you now? Sorry, Margaret. Am I paying for this? Yeah, I would agree with you though, John. I think that's important. And I think because and I'm being honest, I think my business and my personal relationships are very close. If you ask any of my relationships, I'll go golfing, dinners. I like to show who I am, and that's a part of Jason. And it's a part, I think, of that works, I think. Because if you show your own self and be yourself, again, whether you see me tomorrow with my mother or you see me in work, I think I'm the right person. That's the other one. The business side, I think, and it's probably happened to a lot of us, and we need to keep thinking about this. You focus on one relationship and you think you've got it sewn up, and clearly the machine starts pushing you to, are you covered, John or Jason? Are you there? Yeah, I've got the right things, I've got covered. And sometimes you have this view that, someone trumps the person that you know. And it's happened to me a couple of times. It will always do. I mean, you don't get a perfect. But that would be one that I would say to listeners of just to watch out for, of not getting too cozy or not I had one just a couple of months ago where someone trumped the person that I thought was going to make the relationship. And I was tight. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, how I was going to do it. It annoyed me because I could have made the move 6 months ago, but I know why I didn't. I won't go into it, but I knew why I didn't make that move to try and catch someone else. Had we met that person, would it have changed? I don't think so, but it annoyed me personally from a relationship standpoint. I hadn't covered everyone. It's very difficult, but I think my belief is life's short. We need to learn from it, and I learn every day. And again, that's why 25 years at IBM, if I'm not learning, the day I stop learning, the day is when I'll leave the place. I think that's, it's a big point of it. And as long as we listen, understand, course correct, adapt, adopt, improve, was my father's phrase that I always took with me from a family business. I think that's important as well.
So if I just take that theme then, adapting and improving. So one of the things the challenge that you're working on, as I understand, is how do you, in an industry that you're working in, where you have got an aging workforce, in an industry which has sort of fallen out of favor in terms of broad context, how do you attract new and interesting talent? And it's not just about relationships with clients, but it's also relationships with your employees, right? And I guess this transcends not just the oil and gas industry, but more broadly. And what can we learn from how we develop relationships with clients to how we develop relationships with employees and attract?
It's funny, I had a conversation with a client about this 2 weeks ago on a podcast. And he reminded me, because I was challenging the CTO of this company that who's also a good friend of mine, that don't we have to market ourselves better to attract more people? And he reminded me, it was a great sort of slap in the face. He said, Jace, did you remember any marketing from oil and gas when you got involved? And we both laughed. And I thought, no, we kind of fell into. And that's generally where, anywhere from 25 to 50 years ago, I think people fell into oil and gas, whether you had a skill of SAP or engineering, or you were in the right location, Houston or Aberdeen or Malay, you generally, fell into the industry. So I did think about that after the podcast, thinking, wow, you're right. I was thinking that we needed to do more. The industry is in a struggle economically just now, or just the whole world believes that it's a dirty industry. And I think it's, there's a big problem just now in trying to get our name out there that says, well, hold on, everything from the clothes you wear to the car you drive, unless you drive a Tesla, but John. But there's a lot more things. The sofa we're sitting on, etc. Guess what it's made of? Petrochemical. And so we need to do some more marketing, I still believe, on some of the fantastic digital work of how we're reducing flaring, how we're reducing methane leaks, how we're using digital to reduce water wastage. That'd be fantastic, because then those types of projects people would want to be involved in. It's better for the world. We'll meet our 2030 sort of carbon emissions. We'll then start focusing as a community on Earth of how do we move away from fossil fuels and how do we transition over a number of time. I think it will take us some time to do it. But I do think, how do we retain them? For me, in Houston, it needs to be a place to work and a place of fun. I think that's the number one that people are looking for. And it probably goes down to the culture that I'm trying to build. And the projects really need to be clear, and we're giving something back to and it's something interesting. I think there needs to be some flexibility. There is a big discussion just now of, I don't know so much about London, John, but a lot of the Houston businesses are going back to 3 days a week, and it's a demand of 3 days a week. So how do we do that when we actually, in the last 2 years, we've been comfortable? People can have breakfast with their children and take them to school. You can start at 6 o'clock in the morning, don't need to get on a train, and you can get a lot more done. We're trying to increase the female percentage within our industry. Well, hold on, how do we do that without flexibility? What about people with children? How do we? So there's a lot of that stuff going on. At the same point, when we do get that cultural sensitivity right, how do I and we retain, attract, and embed the staff? And I think it's the same for IBM, and I think it's the same for the oil and gas industry. My CIO told me the other day he was at a career fair, and everyone was queuing at the Google and Microsoft stand, and there was no one at his oil and gas bench. So he went and stood at the Google stand, tapped a young lady on the shoulder and said, "Why not come across to my company?" I was a big multinational oil and gas company. And the person said, "But hold on, you're oil and gas, you don't do IT." And why would I deal with that? Just showed there was, I think what's happening is the world in the last 2-3 years has just taken a big downer on the oil and gas industry. And I think we're having an impact. And I really do think we need to do some of these fantastic projects that we're doing. We need to make a big name for it and need to show it and market it out there. The biggest project that I got involved in that was really actually sustainability back in 2000 is when in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh relied on hydropower. In the dry season, guess what happened? Power cuts. There used to be ticker tapes over the televisions. I was saying, switch your television off if you're not watching it. Petro Vietnam, BP, Statoil, I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was, found gas 360 clicks in the South China Sea. They piped it onto An Phu, put it into the generation and put it into the power system. Guess what? Power all the year, no power cuts or less power cuts, let's say, in Ho Chi Minh. What a great project to be involved in. So initially staffing it was difficult. When you told them the story of how we were doing it and dressed it up, I had a number of people wanting to go and join it. We need to do more of that again. So I don't know if that makes sense to you. I'm just trying to work it,
No,
that's the type of thing.
I guess it's going back to what we've been discussing around relationships. It's about being authentic and having a sense of purpose that people can relate to. And so I think in today's environment where sustainability is a big issue for most people, especially Gen Z, which effectively are the new talents that industries are trying to attract. It's linking it to how is oil and gas being relevant to support sustainability in the energy transition. And I think the point you're making is we all need oil and gas here, right now, and it's part of that transition story. And it has a role to play. And then there's things that the industry can do to
The other thing I'm doing is going out with a bunch of CXOs to the universities and P-Tech schools, because that's where it all starts. So what we've agreed to do with this podcast that I'm leading just now, and the team and some of our CXOs, is get those guys talking and try and work out what do we need to do differently with the young ones from high school to, or younger than you and I, let's just say, from high school and college. You're younger. You are younger. I found that out again today.
Sorry.
But I think we need to look at how are we looking at the industry and how do we make it much more attractive. And we need the LSUs. We're talking to LSU with our Baton Rouge Centre, which we've got down there. There's 850 people down in Baton Rouge. We've got a good feeder from LSU, which is in Baton Rouge as well. Which is a university in Louisiana. So we need to go back, find out what we're doing and not doing, and course correct there.
What's one of the most exciting things that you're seeing in the industry right now that's going to attract people?
I think it's that digital transformation. I think it's people are needing to look at how we're going to do something totally crazy. That's, let's have a look at new inventions that we can really use technology. And you and I won't be able to do it. We need the new skills that are going to come and do it. I think there's so many different thoughts that are going around of, EV stations. How do we then mix those? What messages are we giving to people? How are we doing it? How are we looking after wind farms? How do you take an engineer on how big is that? 30 mile by 30 miles and 1,900 wells. How do you make sure that he's doing prioritizing the right track, so he's saving time, saving fuel, saving energy. I think a lot of these things can be, if you look at what you're doing, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and driving out the efficiency in the industry and being part of the solution as opposed to the problem. And then I guess there's also transferable skills, which in a very capital-intensive industry that are directly relevant to building the new sustainable economy. Right?
Yeah, I was at a Schlumberger conference this weekend, or a digital forum, with 45 different clients. The Schlumberger, we're one of their partners. And the whole conversation, there was a number of CEOs on stage, and every one of them said, our iPhones, etc., we need to look at the younger Gen Z coming through and get them input. So I think we can give them the the expertise of the industry and what we've tried before, but we do need to lean on some of our younger people coming through that have been born with the technology that maybe you and I have learned to use, and see what we can actually do with some of this. Some of the stuff that I now see coming through and how we're doing things is fantastic.
Maybe on a closing note, Jason.
Is this another difficult question?
No. So as a relationship person,
yes.
What's one of the who's someone that you would love to meet, as an aspiration?
Who would I like to meet? My goodness. I probably Richard Branson. I met him once on a flight. I shook his hand. Is that really me? That's a little bit of a lie, isn't it? He was actually on a BA flight, actually. He took A1 and he was going out from Mumbai to London. There was a big, they made a big thing about it on the, as we got on, that said, welcome Richard Branson to our British Airways flight. That was quite funny. But I would like to sit down with him, and he, just fantastic history. If you know his, I'm pretty sure you know him probably better than I do. Just his history of failure, get up, get knowing for things, and using the relationships. I think that he'd be a great guy to go and lunch with and just sit and just, listen to some of his stories. I would like to do that, I think.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully Richard Branson will be listening. And,
Richard Branson, if you really want to have lunch with Jason Duff, John Sullivan will pay. More than willing to travel to any Necker Island, is it?
I believe so.
Okay, Necker Island. Let's get on there. I'll do the podcast, actually. There you go. You say yes, John pays, I'll get you on a podcast.
Fantastic.
Do you think that'll work?
I don't know. Well, on that bombshell.
Call me. Relationships.
Great. It's been great having you, Jason. And wish you a safe trip back. And hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, John, thank you very much. Seriously, fantastic. And thank you.